Now we're going to take a look at this morning's papers. The Irish Times reports a forensic banking specialist has claimed in a US court that Anglo-Irish Bank and its successor Irish Bank Resolution Corporation overcharged customers by an estimated €1.2 billion. The Irish Independent says that child benefit and the old age pension are safe from cuts in the upcoming budget, but that a raft of smaller allowances will be hit to make up €300 million in social welfare cuts. Pictured there, we see two junior doctors protesting outside the Mater Hospital in Dublin yesterday. The Examiner reports a groundbreaking report on child rape and sexual abuse. It shows that the average age of an offender is 26. Over a third of abusers are children, and that family members pose the greatest threat of all to children. The Irish Daily Mail says that Garda chiefs are putting together a radical scheme to station local Gardaí in post offices around the country. This proposal is expected to bring relief to communities that have been left isolated by the recent closure of 100 Garda stations. The Irish Star reports a Rolex seized from a Limerick gangster's house is being sold on eBay by the Criminal Assets Bureau. The €9,900 watch was seized from Edward Eds McCarthy last year. The Mirror says that fears for Richard O'Donovan are growing as he was snatched off a street in broad daylight by a ruthless gang. Witnesses have reported that the County Cavan man was pulled from his car and bundled into an SUV. The Irish Sun says that reality star Callum Best is broke after blowing all of his cash on drink and women. He's now filed for bankruptcy after years of reckless spending. Finally, the Herald reports that a man armed with a hatchet caused chaos in a pub whilst customers were watching the new love-hate drama. Customers and staff managed to disarm the man before alerting the Gardaí. Well, those are the headlines. I'm joined now by Karl Deeter and by Joe O'Shea. Thank you both very much indeed for coming in to us this morning. I suppose we might start with the budget. I mean, stick with money for a moment. Pressure on Joan Burton to cut welfare. Karl, you've been looking at some of the budget figures.
Yeah, she has to come up with 300 million. We have been told that child benefit is safe. We were told that in the past, and then it wasn't safe, and now it is again. So I suppose you can take some comfort from that. I think all the various interest groups are out there at the moment trying to put the word out as to why they shouldn't take this cut.
Yeah, well, I mean, we learned yesterday there's 0.6 billion to fight for now, I suppose.
Precisely, but the ESRI, for instance, who we were just speaking about, are saying that we shouldn't be looking for less than 3.1 billion. They're saying take the full austerity pain now, get it out of the way, get it over and done with. So old age pension, we're being told, is safe. And I think that really what it's going to boil down to is what are the trade-offs, which benefits are going to be cut. We don't know, but we are being told it's everything that isn't old age pension and child benefit. And that really means that there's a huge amount left on the table to really bargain over.
And it's going to be 300 million. I mean, are we fairly sure of that figure coming out of social welfare?
I'd originally heard 400 million.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
And then we're being told 300 million.
Yeah.
It's a movable feast.
It's interesting how much we are hearing about the budget. In the past, there were no, they didn't have that many leaks. You didn't hear that much, and you did get surprises, and there were kind of stuff that you hadn't heard in the run-up. These days, it just seems to be a lot more information coming out, strategic leaking in a way, and also talk about a sort of an ideological battle between the coalition partners, because we're hearing a lot about this culture of entitlement, about people being paid too much on the dole, on social welfare, that they don't actually want to work. And it seems to be there's going to be a big struggle about that they're going to protect child benefit and the old age pension, but they're going to look at work schemes are sort of compelling people to get off social welfare and into the workplace.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting. I thought it was interesting yesterday that the Minister Noonan named the figure as well, that it was going to be closer to the 2.5 than 3.1. Were you surprised by that?
A little, but I think we're increasingly living in a world where the media cycle is important to politicians. It does in many ways direct where their focus needs to be. And in playing into that, it obviously serves to their purpose to release some of that information.
It kind of takes away some good news from the day, doesn't it? That, listen, we're only taking 2.5 from you. It could have been a lot worse.
I hate to break it to you, that's not good news.
Well, yes,
for your average person out there
lot of money.
looking for any service, for your average person in this country, you will notice zero material difference between living in an economy that is cut by 2.5 billion and 3.1. You're not going to arrive in, maybe a hospital and say to yourself, wow, I can experience the, 0.6 of a billion improvement in services here. You're not going to see it. The people that are affected are the ones who are directly affected by the cuts, and that will be more on the side of those who see reduced incomes from it. But for a lot of people, it's bad news one way or the other. So you can't kind of dress it up as being something positive when it's a 2.5 billion euro cut.
Yeah, fair enough. Joe, listen, you've been looking at a story on GAA. This is it's kind of another finance story, but Dublin GAA have scooped a huge sponsorship deal.
This is all over the back pages of the papers, and I think people are recognising this as a bit of a game changer. Dublin GAA have signed, some people are saying, 4 million sponsorship deal over 4 or 5 years with the insurance giant AIG, who currently sponsor Manchester United and the All Blacks in rugby. So this is a big deal. Now, what you could see is an imbalance coming into the game, because this will put the Dublin GAA setup far and away out in front in terms of revenues of what the other counties have, even big counties such as Cork and Kilkenny and Galway and Clare. And if that money is put into youth development, as Dublin GAA has been doing for the past decade or more, and spending money on getting young kids playing, and huge amounts of money, could you see Dublin dominating over the next 5-10 years, hurling and football, with that kind of financial muscle?
It would kind of ruin things, wouldn't it? If there was just, I mean, listen, I'm a Dub, I'd be very happy, but
right.
it would ruin the whole kind of contest, wouldn't it?
Would ruin it for Dublin.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. AIG are going to put their marketing muscle behind Dublin as well. There's a new jersey rumoured to be coming out in December for the Christmas market, which is going to sell huge numbers. You go around Dublin, you see all the kids in Dublin jerseys and adults. So if you're in Cork, if you're in Galway, if you're in Clare, you're looking at this and thinking, the GAA has always been almost a socialist organisation in the way they distribute the wealth to the grassroots and spread it around the country.
Really? So they've always operated like that? It's not what you raise in your own county?
No, it's always about growing the games nationally and putting money into places where maybe there isn't a big GAA attrition or a big setup. But now the Dubs are going to come in with this huge financial muscle, and you're just thinking...
And they've had such a success already. Like, they know how to spend the money. What they've done with their hurling has been amazing.
Listen, all credit to the Dubs, and what the youth development programmes for hurling has been spectacular. And you see kids walking around in Dublin now with hurls on their shoulders, which you never saw. When I came to Dublin first, you never saw that. But you got to say, this could imbalance the whole setup. This could be Dublin getting loads of money, putting it into youth development, having a huge population, huge money, and just dominating the other counties.
It's interesting. Karl, what about postcodes? We heard about those yesterday.
Yeah.
7 digits.
7-digit postcodes. They're called different things in different places. Postcodes, zip codes, that show, Beverly Hills 90210. That's actually a postcode that made a whole show on the back of it. What we're going to have, though, is something very different. We're going to have a postcode that isn't just a code to your area. It's going to be a code to your actual individual building. And that, to me, is fascinating because it's different, but it also means what use is your address. If someone says, where do you live? I live at 826 B92, whatever it is, that's going to be your actual precise to your front door address.
Yeah, but nobody would understand that code. I mean, you'll still need your address to tell people how to get to your house.
Well, yeah.
People who deliver it will have
If you want to invite people over, if you're like me and you have no friends, you don't have to worry about that. But if you wanted to send a letter, then you'd be just fine. Another thing I think it's going to feed into is to make a more fully functioning property cadaster or database, which can be used for all sorts of different things, be it valuations or property tax returns. And then you're also going to have a lot of businesses who have to adjust to this, because now it's not going to be a case of enter your county. It's going to be enter your postcode, so there'll be a whole load of work that has to be replicated. But the problem is, in Ireland, about 30% of addresses aren't highly specific. In other words, you'd have obvious town replications, Blackrock Dublin, Blackrock Louth, but then you'd have just a house name, and that doesn't really tell you anything about how to get there. So it's going to be a good thing in many ways, but also don't be surprised if it ends up featuring in things like your property tax bill.
Yeah, that is interesting. The whole Dublin 4 thing will be gone.
Oh, no, that'll never go. That will never go, believe me.
Yeah, Dublin 049 instead.
Yes,
we'll still totally understand what Dublin 4 means.
We're talking about, yeah.
Fair enough. Oh, listen, what about that? I mean, it really is quite a shocking report on child abuse. This is the Red Crisis Network of Ireland has done this. The average age of an offender is just 26, a huge span of ages.
Yeah, this is a very comprehensive report, and in some ways it tells us what we already knew, but in other ways it actually focuses on very specific areas and tells us things that we probably didn't know before. It really highlights the fact that stranger danger, as it's called, is not the main factor in child sex abuse, that it's much more often within the family or close family friends.
But we did, as you say, kind of know that.
Yes,
it's the age profile is interesting.
Yes, the age profile is interesting as well. If the average age is 26, and you've got to think as well, we would have a fair amount of very elderly, historically.
Kind of outliers.
Outliers, yeah. So
skew it up.
So that's skewing it up. I think what the Rape Crisis Network are saying is very interesting as well, that we need to look at education. We need to look at changing the culture. We need to look at boys, for instance, because 97%, 98% of attackers are male. And I think what they're saying is, in schools, we need to start educating young men or younger about, respect, about proper sexual practices.
Yeah, about what's normal.
What's normal and what isn't. And traditionally in this country, we have had a problem with sexual matters in school. We have had a problem with teaching about sexual health, about, what is right and what is wrong, or even talking about it. And I think they're making a very strong point in that we need to change that culture, and we need to actually start looking at teaching young boys in particular, and girls, of course, as well.
Yeah, I mean, because when you're talking about young boys, and many of these are young boys, a third of sexual abusers are children themselves, you'd have to question whether or not they actually know this is abuse or this is illegal, what they're doing.
If you start to look underneath the figures, it's 37%, so it's more than just over a third are children abusing other children. Now, when you dig underneath that, you find about 4% of them are age 10, about 4% are, or 14% are then below age 14, 39% are 15 and 16, and 43% are 17, and 98% of them are obviously young boys doing this. So you've got children doing this to other children. I think that, for instance, at age 10, are they even aware of what's happening? And then you need to look at the role that abuse has played in their life. You've got to look at the peer environment they exist in, hormonal changes that men go through as they're maturing, because this whole thing of men being the only bad guys, it doesn't only happen in this.
It's
the same in murder.
a lot more complex than just lock them up, isn't it?
Recidivity rates of re-offences. You've got all these different things that play into it, and I think it's really it's a difficult thing to understand. But the rage that you would have against someone age 26, for instance, would you feel the same if the offender in that instance was age 10? Like, are they even aware or able to comprehend the depth of what they're doing?
Yeah, it's very valuable information, and I'm sure an awful lot more education, research is going to come out of this. But look, we're going to leave it at that, but thank you both very much indeed for coming into us this morning. Now it's time for the sports news, and Claire McNamara